Hello and welcome to our March member program. Tonight we have a speaker. It's one of our own members, Natasha Torry. But before we get to her, we do have a few bits of business to cover. So I'll give you a membership update, a brief treasurer's report. We have updates from both the voter access and the environmental committee. We have a few words on fair maps, a few more words about our annual meeting, which has been pushed to July, and then we'll get to our featured speaker. So first off, the membership report. We're up to 110 members now, which is really strong for organization in its fourth year and in a relatively small metropolitan area. So we've accomplished a lot. Those dues and donations have really helped us get the word out about voting and voter registration and other issues. We are looking for more volunteers, so I encourage anyone to reach out to us if you'd like to volunteer. No specific skills are necessary. You won't be asked to do more than you have time for, and I can assure you anytime you can provide will make a difference. So you can contact me, you can contact the league email, which is the same email you get your meeting notices from, or you can reach out to any member of the leadership team. We're especially right now looking for members who want to help with our diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative, and also members, excuse me, who would like to work with our Fair Maps initiative. The email address for the league is down here again if you need that. Treasurer's report. Revenue this year was as much as our dues. We're doing very well. Donations were very impressive, and that allowed us to produce 2 Get Out the Vote mailers we'll talk about a little bit more later. Our expenses did slightly exceed what we had budgeted, but that was due largely to those 2 mailers. And again, we were able to do that because of the great donations we got. We did 2 mailers. Each one went out to over 20,000 households in the county. We had a couple of members who offered to crunch through the voter turnout data and compare that to postal routes in the county, and were able to determine those postal routes which had the lowest voter turnout. So back in November, before the general election, or actually last fall, before the general election, we were able to send out over 20,000 mailers to households in the cities of Sheboygan, Plymouth, and Sheboygan Falls. And then just a couple of weeks ago, we sent out a mailer that focused on the importance of local elections, and that went out to over 20,000 households also. Again, that was made possible by your dues and donations, so your donations are very helpful and are really being put to good work. So the Voter Access Committee was responsible for that mailer I just talked about, but they've been busy with some other things throughout the pandemic. Before each election, they check, the volunteers from that committee check with each municipality to find out what the early voting days and hours will be and where the absentee drop box locations are. That information is posted on our website. So go to the website and please share that on your own social media to help get the word out. The Voter Access Committee is also working to build coalition with the ACLU, the City of Sheboygan Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Group, and the County Board Supervisors to implement a voting initiative for those in the Sheboygan County Jail who are eligible to vote. This is an issue across the state, voter access in the jail, and we're proud to be working to improve that situation. Our communications chair, Kristen, has also been adding some Spanish language documents to our website, and you can check that out on our website. Here's an example. And again, please share that through social media to spread the word that that's available for those who need it. Another big project of the Voter Access Committee was a subgroup that formed to produce videos. They interviewed candidates for each of the 4 local races, or I should say for each of 4 local races this spring. and they extended the invitation to interview to all candidates for those races. There were a total of 13 candidates for these 4 races, and 10 of the candidates agreed to participate, and those interviews are posted on our website. Those races are the Sheboygan Area School Board, where we interviewed 5 of the 6 candidates. The City of Sheboygan Mayor's race, we interviewed 2 of those candidates. The Appellate Court District 2, again, 2 candidates, only one of which participated in the interview, both of which, of course, were invited to interview. And then we have 2 candidates for the City of Sheboygan Alderman in District 2, and that interview is also on the web. You'll find that on our YouTube channel and also on our league webpage. And both are shareable, so spread the word again. Environmental Committee update. The Environmental Committee recently formed a book club. The first event was early in March. For the next event, they're planning to watch a movie. The movie is Kiss the Ground. It's available on Netflix. It is also available as a book for those who prefer to read a book. And we will get a Zoom login ready, and that will be on the web and on our Facebook page before the May 3rd discussion. The Environmental Committee is also planning an Earth Day beach cleanup activity. That will be on Saturday, April 24th at the DeLand, starting at the DeLand Park Beach Shelter at 10 a.m. and coffee and donuts will be provided. And again, more information on that will be available on Facebook and our website closer to that date. So 2020 was a big year with the elections and the census, and that brings us to our next big initiative, which is Fair Maps. In the last couple of member programs, we heard from Melissa Prentice, who is a member of our chapter and also represents our congressional district on the People's Maps Commission for the state of Wisconsin. Please continue to check that website, the People's Maps Commission website, and please provide the commission with your comments about redistricting and fair maps. Now, for those of us who are looking for information and clarification on redistricting and how maps can be manipulated to diminish the voice of voters, Kristen has been adding Fair Maps information to the website, and you can find that there. If you go to the home page across the top, you'll see there's a Fair Maps button. That information is also available in Spanish, but I'll go to the English version now. She has information here on what gerrymandering looks like, some of the terms used, cracking and packing. There's a video available. Here's some more information that shows visually what happens if you take the line and kind of draw it to advantage, how that changes the number of seats that could be won. We also have the presentation Mary Lynn Donahue gave in January of 2020. She was a plaintiff in a case that went to the US Supreme Court. Also have some updates from Melissa Prentice there again, and another video on fair maps and gerrymandering. I'm going to play a little bit of this video, which is from 2 high school students in Whitefish Bay, created this a couple of years ago. They won an award for their work. We'll start partway in.
Take a look.
Welcome to Wisconsin, the home of a balmy summer climate, bubblers, a massive lake, every dairy product under the sun, and milk, and gerrymandered legislative districts.
Wait, what was that word you just said?
Which one?
One of the last ones, something about Jerry?
Oh, gerrymandering.
Yeah. What in the world is gerrymandering?
Gerrymandering.
Redistricting and gerrymandering.
Gerrymandering? I have no idea, actually.
I should. Gerrymandering. No, but unfortunately, I don't.
I don't. No.
I've heard about it. Gerrymandering means, yes, I did it one time, but I do not know.
Gerrymandering. Can you give me a clue?
Do not.
To understand gerrymandering, we first need to understand what reapportionment is.
Well, what's that?
Every 10 years, the census is taken, which measures where people live. Based on these measurements, seats are apportioned or given to states in the House of Representatives.
Oh, well, that doesn't sound that bad.
Well, the Constitution says that state legislatures are the ones who decide where legislative districts are, so politics can influence this line drawing.
Oh, well, that can get sketchy.
Yes, it can. Here's an example. Think of this cookie as the state of Cookie Land. A census has just been taken, and their population of 20 M&Ms has garnered 5 seats in Congress. Let's say the red M&Ms are Republican and the blue M&Ms are Democrats, thus creating a majority of Republicans in the state, with 12 red M&Ms and 8 blue ones. If we were the Republican Party and had control of the state legislature, then we could draw the districts like this. In this first scenario, there are 4 districts where no majority exists, meaning that the most people have created an impact through their vote, and leaving 1 Republican-controlled seat. If you do this, everything is fine because districts would be split with fair representation and the most people can have their voice heard. But look at this. We can strategically cut around the M&Ms so that all the blue M&Ms are in 2 regions, giving Republicans a 3-2 advantage in the legislature. This is called packing because many of the votes for one party have been packed into 1 or 2 districts, increasing Republican control over the state. Not only can state legislatures pack districts, but they can also crack them. We can cut around the blue M&Ms so that the Democratic vote is diluted across as many districts as possible, giving the Republicans the chance to have a 4-1 majority, depending on this last open seat.
Oh my God, that's a crazy power switch, even though the number of Republicans and Democrats stayed the same. Well, how does this relate to Wisconsin?
Well, as a result of the 2010 redistricting, Wisconsin is actually a very gerrymandered state. For example, in the 2016 congressional elections, 1,270,000 Wisconsinites voted for a Republican, while 1,397,000 cast their votes for a Democrat. But when all was said and done, there were 5 Republicans going to represent Wisconsin alongside only 3 Democrats. The number of delegates going to represent our state should have been equal, not swayed towards the party that got less votes.
So we used to always have 2 congresspeople from Milwaukee, the Milwaukee metropolitan area, and then Wisconsin lost a seat. So then things were redrawn, and Milwaukee really only had 1. Now, the way they redrew things, in Milwaukee County, the bulk of the city of Milwaukee is in Gwen Moore's district.
That's ridiculous!
I know, and this can be traced even further down the ballot to state legislative elections, where in Wisconsin, 45% of the vote went to Democrats, but the Democrats only won 35% of the legislature. You know, if votes were apportioned correctly, the Democrats would have 45 seats, which is 10 more than their current 35.
Wow. Is there any way for this gerrymandering stuff to stop?
Yes, James, there is. Right.
And we'll stop there for now. But that, again, is on our website, so feel free to go and watch the rest of it. But ways to make that stop. If we all speak out and talk with our friends and relatives and get the word out, we can do something about this. At least 56 of Wisconsin's 72 counties have expressed support for a fair maps process. They've had a resolution or a referendum. And we are also planning to participate in a Fair Maps Day of Action on April 29th. And there is some information on that on the web also. You can find that under People Powered Day of Action with the League of Women Voters US website. We haven't quite fleshed out what we'll be doing yet, but watch for more information on that. And we could definitely use some volunteers, so please step forward to help out with that initiative. Next, we've got a couple words about the next annual meeting. So rather than holding that in May, as is our normal annual meeting month, we're pushing that to July in hopes that we'll be able to meet in person. The plan is to vote on some bylaw revisions. The bylaws have been revised to make them a little more functional. We'll also have officer elections, and that will include board of directors, vice president, and president. So anyone interested in those positions, or even just want to talk and learn more about it, please come forward. You can email the league again. There's the email address. You can contact me. You can contact anyone on the leadership team. So get in touch and you can learn how to help drive next year's initiatives. Now we'll move on to our guest speaker, which is Judge Natasha Torry. As I said, she is one of our chapter members, and she will help us better understand our court system. Natasha earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in Politics and Government from Ripon College and her law degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School in Madison. Torry has been practicing law for the past 20 years in government, private practice, and nonprofit sectors. She has served as judge for the Sheboygan Area Municipal Court since 2015. Torry also currently represents the interests of low-income clients in the areas of unemployment and housing at Legal Action of Wisconsin. She has been an active member of the Sheboygan Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Group, the Sheboygan Service Club, Sheboygan First Congregational Church, and is the Diversity Coordinator for the Family Law Board for the State Bar of Wisconsin. So thank you, Natasha, and welcome.
One of our 2 law schools, take certain classes, get, I don't remember all the rules anymore, but there are certain classes you have to take, you have to get decent grades, pass the ethics background test, and then you can practice law. So I've had a couple interesting, experiences like that with Wisconsin having, special privileges. But the reason that we consider it not necessary to have a law degree for a lot of the municipal courts is because they're based in small towns. And it's meant to be this community-based court. So if you can imagine, we have a lot of huge counties that have a big area, and it's nicer for people to not necessarily have to drive, an hour or more for court. And sometimes maybe there's like more of a local initiative that a community wants to enact, and take advantage of. And so that's why you don't necessarily have to be an attorney, because there are lots of counties that we have in Wisconsin that have a shortage actually of attorneys. What's important to understand about municipal court is it's an alternative to the criminal justice system. So I handle traffic citations, but I also handle operating while intoxicated. Today I had a trial for disorderly conduct. We handle retail theft. And another interesting, I don't know if this is like the best thing in the world, but tidbit about Wisconsin is that we're the only state in the country where operating while intoxicated is actually not considered a crime if it's a first offense. First offense, operating while intoxicated, with which could be either drugs, it could be even prescription drugs, but if you've taken an amount that renders you unsafe to drive, or alcohol where you're unsafe to drive, and then per se, if you're at a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08 or above, first offense, not a crime. And we took it a step further because that wasn't enough, apparently. And we have a strong tavern league where you can have a second operating while intoxicated, but as long as it's been at least 10 years between your first and your second, that's also not considered a crime. That could be heard at the municipal court. What's important to understand about that is for these offenses that I mentioned, like disorderly conduct or retail theft, that gives the police the power to decide if they think that something maybe should be handled locally. So for instance, kids. Today, my disorderly conduct trial was involving kids. They had a really nasty fight at Walmart in public. People were afraid, but the police recognized they were fighting over a girl. And so instead of sending it to the district attorney, they decided to send it to the municipal court. And so that's where, when you have a municipal court, you're able to make decisions like that. And I'll get into it a little bit more, some of those benefits of being able to make those decisions. But because it's civil, anyone that's convicted of an offense in a case that's heard at the municipal court is not guilty of a crime. And so they don't build a criminal record. So you need to understand that when you have a municipal court, it's considered a co-equal branch of government. So I, as a judge, am considered to be at the same level as our executive branch, which in Sheboygan is the mayor and the city administrator, and then also as the council. And so because of that, I have the responsibility to oversee my own court staff and court clerks, which is a little interesting. So at the circuit court, there is a clerk of court that's also an elected official, and her name is Melody Lorgy. Her job is to manage all of the clerks and all of their clerks' duties and what they do in court. Well, at the municipal court, I'm the whole branch. So I'm the judge, and then it's also my responsibility to hire and supervise clerks and help them in doing their job. So it's considered a separate branch, but I do have to have my funding by the council. So by statute, the council is required to provide me at least one clerk. And then after that, it's basically negotiable. I have 2 clerks here at the municipal court. So if you were to look at this as like a hierarchy, at the top are the voters for the village of Kohler and the city of Sheboygan. So that's who I answer to. If there's some concern that I'm not doing a good job, that I'm not issuing decisions or hearing people in a way that's considered fair, respectful, that's who I answer to. And then I have a head clerk, and then there's also a deputy clerk. So that's the structure of our court. It's pretty basic. So the types of cases that we handle, again, I covered the non-criminal traffic, which would be OWI, but that's also speeding, driving too fast for conditions, unsafe lane deviation, so traffic tickets. Not tickets where somebody got killed, okay? Not tickets where it was a crime, the way that the vehicle was used. And then criminal code adopted by ordinance, so that's what I was referring to with retail theft, trespass. Today I had a trial for a barkeep who was allowing underage people to come in there and drink. All right. Other ordinance violations could be, so when it says zoning, so for instance, if you are putting a house on property that was zoned for commercial. Building code would be a big example. And that was something that I didn't realize where I got elected, was just how much there is out there in building code, both citations and forfeitures. And you might have remembered when Sheboygan had that big push to beautify and restore Erie Avenue and Kohler Memorial when you come into town. And I can say that I definitely remember that. When I first started practicing in Sheboygan in 2003, and I was coming up from Milwaukee, and the only part of Sheboygan that I really saw was, getting off on 43 and coming down Kohler Memorial, and then I'd go to the courthouse. And so it gave me a different impression. And it's just kind of ironic because eventually I was required to move to the county. And so I remember people at the courthouse that's who I knew in Sheboygan were saying, "Oh, you don't want to live in Sheboygan. There's drugs. It's bad." And I remember thinking, well, okay, I mean, I'm not seeing anything that's too amazing on this drive in. And so I ended up living in Oostburg for 9.5 years. And so that's part of my life. It's part of my story. But so I was able to see that change, in the transformation of that gateway neighborhood. And that was very much because of building code enforcement done by the city of Sheboygan. So that's an example of what happens in this court. And I have lots of, opinions about it and its effectiveness, especially because of the fact that a lot of the people that get cited and targeted by building code enforcement are poor people. It's not that everyone who's not, keeping their roof up is just lazy, but that's for another discussion. And then another, what's important to understand is that for all of the types of cases that are assigned to the municipal court, I have exclusive jurisdiction over it. So it's not that someone can say, I got this traffic ticket, but I don't really like Judge Torrey. I just want to go straight to the circuit court. I can be substituted for cause and I can recuse myself, but you can't just avoid the municipal court. You can't just decide that you'd rather, go higher up to the circuit court in order to avoid it. This slide basically just shows an example of how much of a difference having a municipal court can make in terms of a penalty. And so a common citation that we deal with is a possession of marijuana, and that was something that is newer. And when I say newer, newer to me means within the last 15 years. So I'm going to have to adjust what newer means. But when I first came to Sheboygan, all marijuana possession was a crime. Went through the DA's office. DA's office is bogged down, so it would sit. So people would have their marijuana possession stuff pending for a long time. It's stressful. The courts were mad. Why aren't you dealing with it? Well, the DA is going to say we're not dealing with it because we actually have other things that are, harming people more than marijuana possession. And so you can see that when you don't have a municipal court and you are cited with a crime of marijuana possession, you can face a forfeiture of $500, but also jail time and having your driver's license suspended. And you have a criminal record, and that could make it so that you don't receive financial aid and some other funding and sometimes some special licenses. But if there's a municipal court, it's just a forfeiture. Unfortunately, it could be a super high forfeiture. Whenever you see this $250 to $1,000, that doesn't include the court cost. So in the city of Sheboygan, if you're cited with marijuana possession, the minimum amount that it would be is $376, and then it can go up to $1,321. But there's no jail time. There's no criminal record. Kohler has a set forfeiture for marijuana possession of $671. And I have to be honest that there's been a recent change in the police chief in Kohler, and that has just had amazing effect on their citations in terms of the number. I actually think I have this in front of me right now. So in 2019, Kohler had written a total of 603 citations. And for 2020, they had already topped that by October. So they're writing a lot more tickets than they used to. And so I'm seeing stuff like more marijuana possession from even Kohler. The advantages for defendants to having a municipal court include that you don't have a criminal record, that you can't go to jail, but then also that the forfeitures are a lot less expensive. So they're going to be at least $76.50 less expensive than if you have no municipal court. And I'll get into explain that in a little bit. The advantages for the village or the city are that your cases can get dealt with quicker. So for instance, when I talk about that marijuana possession ticket, that's something that at the circuit court might not be as big of a deal, but locally that's a big deal. I happen to do a lot of truancy cases because the Sheboygan Area School District has really decided, that truancy is important to address early on, and just to basically be able to have conversations with families about their young people, why they're not going to school, how we can come together as adults in their lives to help get them back on track. That's not something that you can necessarily do as often if everything is going to the circuit court, because the circuit court, when they're dealing with juvenile matters, are dealing with more things that are quasi-criminal, or just more issues of either danger or just higher stakes, even though we know that going to school is obviously very important, and that if you don't have an education, it can lead to a lot bigger and worse problems in the future. At the municipal court, I set the time aside for trials, and that's when they're heard. We have trials here every Wednesday. And then initial appearances are Wednesday evening. So I just finished that before jumping on tonight. And when this slide is saying trials are not stacked, what that means is at the circuit court, you might be familiar with, if you've ever served jury duty, that the circuit court doesn't have the time to spare to have just like one jury trial per day. They can't risk that it's going to cancel and then they just lose a day. So often at the circuit court, you might have 4, 5, 6 jury trials all scheduled for the same day. And the court is just planning on that, several or most of these are going to get settled. But it doesn't always happen. And sometimes what happens is multiple sets of parties will have to go to the courthouse and wait in the hall to see if their case can get handled. I remember when I first started practicing law, I was at the Legal Aid Society of Milwaukee, and I had days where I would literally sit in the courtroom all day. And then at the end of the day, be told, oh, okay, I guess we didn't get to your matter. It's going to be rescheduled. And it would be rescheduled months out. And I wasn't charging my clients, but imagine if I would have been a paid attorney and I'm charging, current rates $200-300 an hour for nothing. So you don't have stack trials. So it's a better use of people's time, police time, prosecutor time. Police who have to testify at these trials get paid 3 hours overtime for if they have to come in outside of work. So you're not wasting that. Again, you have this community-based justice system. I'm able to give defendants an individual attention. I'm not as rushed. I'm able to talk to them. I have the courtroom here is actually beautiful. It's very convenient. There's actually parking, and you can park and walk in, as opposed to the courthouse has some challenging parking. And we're able to be more responsive to community needs. So if I'm told that there's, and this might even sound silly, but I'm told sometime, okay, well, there's a stretch of street where there's a concern that everybody's blowing stop signs, and so we want to have some more enforcement and an initiative on that. Well, the police can do that. And then if people want to challenge it, I can have trials on that, or I can, sit down and talk to defendants about their behavior, especially when it's younger people, and how it's dangerous or whatever, the rationale behind why there's this initiative. I have the ability to do that here in the municipal court. So when you get down to that money piece, it's to understand that the court costs are $38 per ticket. So that's the amount of money. Court cost is such a confusing term because we use it interchangeably. So earlier when I said a $250 ticket with court costs is $376, well, that's because part of court costs are costs that go to the county, they're costs that go for the jail, they're costs that go to the state. But the actual portion that the municipality gets to keep is $38 per ticket. And so I'll take us to this next, and then this slide just talks about the different ways that the money is used. But so this is this slide is a good way to kind of explain it. So if you have a $30 speeding ticket, that is going 1 to 10 above. All right. It's interesting how many trials I've had where people take it to trial and they're like, I was only going 6 above. I'm like, oh, okay. Technically that's speeding. Okay. And so, the lowest speeding ticket, $30. If there's a circuit, if there's no municipal court, the defendant pays $175.30. Same exact ticket. If there's a municipal court, the defendant pays $98.80. So obviously better for the defendant, right? They pay a lot less money, but also better for the municipality. If you have the same police writing the same ticket and you don't have a municipal court, that city is only going to get $25 out of that $175.30 ticket. Same police writing the ticket, there's a municipal court, that city gets $63. So that really is an advantage for a community if that is a financial motivation. And Sheboygan, that was when this court was created in 2006. Honestly, I think it was financially motivated. I don't know that anybody tried to hide that at the time, and now there's a different focus, but we still have to justify our existence because it's a choice. So the city doesn't have to have a court. They could actually decide that they want to abolish the court. It would probably be a very bad idea. We're not in a place where the circuit court could just take over all this stuff anymore. And so I don't know, what would happen. I'm not super concerned about it, but that's possible. Okay, it's not a requirement, it's a choice. And so I just went over like some of the reasons why that would be maybe a reason to have a court. So are you able to still see me? Because I tried to click this out now. Okay, good. All right. So I talked about the municipal court. So we're separate. And if you would think of things as going upwards, anything that I do is appealable to the circuit court. So any decision that I make is appealable to the circuit court. And so I explain that to people after they have a trial. And so basically they just have to, and what is unique about this is even the city can appeal. So you might be familiar with this term of double jeopardy, right? So if there's a criminal case and the prosecutor loses, they can't just file brand new criminal charges. Municipal court's not criminal, it's civil. So even the municipal court, at the municipal court, even the city, the prosecutor can appeal to the circuit court. And sometimes they do. Practically, you're not going to get on your judge's good side by appealing, because you're basically saying, I really disagree with you. And most of the time they get their way, but it happens. I've had cases where the city files an appeal. So you have the ability to appeal to the circuit court, then it would go to a circuit court judge. And what's also unique is there's two different ways that they can appeal. They can appeal and request a whole new proceeding, or they can appeal on the record. And that also makes municipal court very interesting. Appealing on the record means they get a transcript and all of the evidence, and it gets sent over to the circuit court. And the circuit court then has to read through it and decide if the municipal court made the right decision. Well, so what makes that interesting and sometimes problematic is for the operating while intoxicated cases, attorneys might want to just see what evidence is going to be presented at the municipal court. They just want, it's basically like they get to do a mini court and see what the case is, but they don't have to call any witnesses of their own. They don't have to ask any questions. But if the city doesn't put their whole case on, do the whole thing with all of their evidence, they could just appeal it on the record. And then the circuit court could throw it out and say, oh yeah, no, I agree. They didn't present their case. So it's a kind of a quirky thing. It makes it's in the advantage of the defendants. But that's the way it works. So you can appeal to the circuit court. You can appeal either on the record or ask for a whole new trial. And then if you're not happy with the circuit court, you can appeal to the Court of Appeals, and then obviously the Supreme Court. And so there are cases that start in the municipal court that go up to the Supreme Court. But those are usually going to be operating while intoxicated. That's usually what it's going to be. Those are highest stakes cases. I could see some building code stuff going. I've had building code judgments over $400,000. But again, those just tend to be people that are poor. And so that might be, why you're less likely to see those being appealed. So I like to think of myself as somebody who doesn't talk a lot. And then I'm looking at the time and I'm like, oh, I've been talking a lot. So I'm wondering at this point, would this be a good time, Jane, to open it up for questions?
I think so. Does anyone have questions? Unmute yourself if you do. I know I learned a few things, Natasha.
Yeah, you could ask me anything. It doesn't have to just be about court. Cheryl, were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, where is the court located? You said
So
it was
I am located in the same building as the police department. So if you're familiar with the police department, it's this modern building, and there's a side that like looks taller than the other with glass that goes around. I like how no one is acknowledging that where the police department is, which is very, very good. So
Is that just off of Erie, like near Erie
yes,
and
yeah,
18th
Erie,
or so?
yeah, and 23rd. I'm right by the clinic.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah, and this is a newer building. It's gorgeous courtroom. Not a lot of thought was put into designing it for a courtroom, so it's not the safest. But it has glass from Germany,
Really?
And
Yeah.
just as an aside, they also have a pharmaceutical drop box in the foyer, so you can access that, I think, at any time of day. I got
right.
rid of some excess medications there a number of years ago.
Yes, they have volunteers at the police department that go through all those medications and make sure they're disposed of. Yes, John.
I'm curious, what's the most unusual case you've ever had come before you? The most memorable.
Yeah, I mean, and then I'll get to you, John. So this one actually made me cry. So like I thought of myself as like a toughie. I did child support enforcement and mental commitments and for 11 years, and I have 4 kids. I can handle a lot. But I cried in court. So it was a case involving a dog, and it was an animal cruelty. And this poor dog, the people moved from their house and they couldn't take the dog, but they didn't take him anywhere so they just left the dog in the house, chained up in the kitchen. And they would come in every few days and just throw food at him. And he was expected to live in his waste. And his little claws grew into his pads. And somebody who was an ex-boyfriend of, who I had known from child support court. And I thought, oh my goodness, if this person is reporting the dog must be in bad shape, because I knew this individual and wasn't always the sweetest person to me. And so they showed photos as if like the testimony, it wasn't going to be enough for me. It was they had the screen and they showed photos. And so he looked like a little brown poodle. And then, but that's because they washed him and he was white. And so that is so hard to get over. Like I hear, it might sound petty. I mean, cause I hear all kinds of stuff, right? I mean, I hear stuff about people fighting. I hear stuff, but for some reason, that one, I will just never, I think it was just my reaction to it. Maybe I was tired. I don't know, but yeah. So that's definitely my most memorable. All right, John, what were you going to ask me?
Yeah, 2 questions. As far as organization of the courts in Sheboygan County, we have branch courts. Are those part of the municipal or the circuit court system? And the second question, do only cities and villages have municipal courts?
Okay, so yes, the branches, when you hear about, branch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's circuit court. So those are county cases. And yes, only a village, or a town or a city would have a municipal court. And so there's 240 municipal court judges in Wisconsin, and only 4 of us are full-time. So it's part-time. Sheboygan is bigger than most. So we average about 7,000 citations a year in the Sheboygan court. And I know of municipalities that have like 200 in a year. I will have 200 tickets in a year. I will have 400 tickets in a night sometimes. So, but yes, they're local. So they're for smaller units, not county.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So what about the towns in Sheboygan who aren't, like say town of Wilson or town of, do they have, I mean, where do they go for municipal court, or they don't have that option?
So, right. So town of Wilson would, if they wanted to have somebody cited for something, then it would have to go through their local law enforcement or county, and then to the circuit court. So then,
Okay, so they bypass municipal court. They wouldn't
right,
have
they
that
don't
option.
have a municipal court. And so that's what's interesting too, to point out about the difference. If you have a municipal court, an officer writes a ticket, it comes to court, right? If you don't have a municipal court, an officer refers a case to the district attorney for criminal charges.
Okay.
So that's, it's a completely different, so the police have a lot less authority. And so then that's where I was saying, it's up to the district attorney, and what's their priority? Do they have time for this? So it's a different system.
Interesting.
Yes. All right. Well, are there any last questions? Okay. I didn't see any green beer or Lucky Charms being had, so I don't want to keep you from that. That might still, I see nice clothing, nice accessories though. So thank you for letting me be with you tonight. I appreciate it. It's definitely been the highlight of my week. Looking forward to speaking with you, and I hope to participate in more events with you in the future.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. We really appreciate having you, and that you spent the time to be here and tell us a little bit more about the courts, because I think that's one area where a lot of people maybe lose interest when it comes time to vote for the judges too, and don't fully understand it, even if they've been there once or twice. There's maybe just a lot to learn for most of us.
For sure. And, so we're in District 2 for Court of Appeals, and it's quite interesting because it's such a large area, and the biggest voting blocks in our district are extremely conservative. So it's it makes for an interesting dynamic. And you had mentioned, so judge positions are supposed to be nonpartisan.
Yeah.
But it has become the norm for judges to basically tell you what party they belong to by announcing, are they the conservative judge? Are they I don't know if I've ever heard somebody say liberal judge, because that's like a dirty word, but for sure you will hear people promote themselves as, either the conservative choice. And so we definitely, for our District 2, have a conservative district for Court of Appeals.
I think I've seen different candidates for judge positions actually on party websites too.
Right. So party can choose to endorse, but a judge is not. A judge is supposed to be nonpartisan. It's really strict. It's not only are you nonpartisan, but you can't even run for a partisan position while you're judge. You can't even step down from being judge to run for a partisan position. You're supposed to wait out your term. Even if you quit, you have to wait until your term would have been up before you can run for it. So, it's very strict. But on an interesting aside, Shelley Grogan, who you mentioned, she's a municipal judge. So she's a part-time municipal judge, and then she's also a clerk at the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I didn't realize how much was covered in municipal court. So as I said, I learned a few things here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Just make one more call for questions. Okay. All right. Well, that's all we had planned for this evening. So I'm going to make one more call for volunteers for Fair Maps initiatives. And Vicki, I don't know if you wanted to say anything about Fair Maps at all. I know you've been looking at some information. You're muted now, but I didn't know if you had a few words to add or not. If you don't, that's fine. Oh, let's unmute you. Oh, I know.
There she
Natasha, can
goes.
you make me the host again? With the little dots in the upper right corner of my window.
All right,
Well-
I'm sorry. Could you tell me again how to do that?
Oh, I think Vicki's on now. Vicki?
No, that's okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think Fair Maps is the continuation of voting rights. Wisconsin is one of the few states that still has their legislature that does the redistricting. But Tony Evers back in last January set up a People's Commission, a nonpartisan commission to also evaluate the census and redraw the maps. And in response to that, our Republican legislators have spent $1 million to hire a law firm in order to fight what's inevitably going to end up in the courtrooms probably by the end of the year. So this year will be an important year for us, not only to be advocating to our current legislators that this is really the way we want to go. We also need to be educating the public about what is redistricting and why it's important to have a nonpartisan independent commission. And so the team, you know, if you choose to be on this team, we'll be really working at kind of laying out a plan on how to support our members in doing this advocating and also helping to inform and educate our community about this really important issue for the future. You see the map that she posted here in our own backyard. And there was definitely a lot of cherry picking going on. And that's why the whole slate of our representatives, both in the Assembly and also in the Senate on the state level, and also in Washington, D.C., are all Republican, Republican. However, if we look at how the voting went in the presidential election, not quite that Republican. So it's an important issue, and I hope you'd like to participate in helping us on this important initiative.
Thanks. Thanks for that summary and recap. Okay, well, I guess with that, hearing no more questions, if anybody wants to unmute and speak up one last time, otherwise we'll just sign off from here. And thanks all for joining us, and watch for future messages from the league.